Exactly. Okay, why don't we get started? Several people have to get off probably around 6:20 or so. So we'll try to roar through this thing if we can. Looks like everybody's here. We're missing Maggie, and she had called and said that she wouldn't be able to join us tonight. Have you all looked at the minutes?
Sorry, that was very late sending out. I
Yes,
was out trying to shovel out.
Oh, okay. That's what you've been doing. Have people had a chance to look at the minutes?
I haven't had a chance.
So
I
do you
just
want
got
to
off
hold
on
off till next time
Look
then?
at them right now.
But Victor, again, and it happened once before and you corrected it, they keep wanting to make your last name Village instead of Villagra. So I will make sure when I send it in, it is correct.
you.
Any other corrections?
No, it looks good.
Some of the people spelled it Viagra.
Well, that would at least be more entertaining.
I know.
Oh, here's Victor Village, right. Okay.
Excuse
Victor
me,
Village.
Zell,
Yes,
are you expecting any attendees this evening?
this is all we've heard from, so I think we're all set.
Okay,
Did you get anybody?
I have someone in the attendee section. They're probably just viewing the meeting. His name is Rick Newton.
Rick
Okay.
Newton? Fine.
Okay, so-
NEWTION?
Yes.
Thank you.
All
Okay.
right. Have a good meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye-bye, Lisa.
Bye.
Okay, so anybody wish to talk from the public? Mr. Newton?
Actually, Zell, we still need to approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Have you all read the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second,
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay, approved. The next item of business is anybody who wishes to provide comments from the public. I think we have one person on the call. Do they wish to speak? Okay, I assume the participant does not wish to speak. Okay, so let's move on to new business. And the first is really the follow-up to our meeting with the town council on December 8th at the COW. I got generally very good feedback from the both the mayor and the town manager, and in fact had a fairly extensive conversation with the mayor about it. She was pleased, and we talked a little bit about what would be the next steps going forward. And we talked about, or she would like to have several specific actions that we could take going forward. I reminded her that our top priority was getting someone on board to staff climate change, resiliency, and sustainability. And she indicated that that is in the works in the town manager's office. Then the question was, when would we want to, as you recall at the beginning of the meeting, she said she would like to have us back. And at the beginning of the meeting, she said, would you like to come back? Or she said, speaking to everybody, either in January or February. And I think I concluded that it would be best for us to do it in February. And so it's set up for the 23rd of February at a COW meeting, a council of the whole meeting, that will come back with specific, more specific recommendations. Would anybody like to sort of have their reaction to the meeting? And we go around the group. Frank?
Thought it went very well. And I thought the questions that came from them at least indicated to me that they were listening. And, it was a good start.
Okay. Sarah?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it was a good meeting. They seemed very earnest about, wanting to do something, which is good. So I thought it went quite well.
Victor?
I agree. I think generally it went well. They may have been a little bit overwhelmed, a lot of information to digest. And I was particularly gratified by the enthusiastic endorsement of what they call a czar of some sort, but namely the person in charge of carrying this forward. So I think that was a very positive outcome of the meeting. And I think we should ride the momentum.
Okay. Jesse?
Yeah, I would echo what Victor just said, that it was nice to have, several members of the council immediately just volunteer that they supported the idea of having a dedicated staff person on this. So I think that's where we will revisit tonight. And if we accomplish that, we've accomplished one really good thing.
I agree. Anything else? Mickey?
Well, I certainly think they were impressed with all of your preparation and your expertise. And I think that was, put things way forward in terms of their accepting any recommendations that came from this group. So I think you guys did a great job.
Okay. Great. Anything else, Mickey? Yeah, well, my thought was, I thought it came across well. I think we had too much information. I think the technical level was probably pretty darn good. Most of the people and as far as I could tell, the ones that spoke up did understand, I think, what we're doing. I guess the one thing that I would caution us about is calling this person that we're hoping the town will hire a czar. I much
That's
prefer.
Gina McCarthy. Sorry, that's Gina McCarthy.
Yeah, and we're not looking for Gina. Although we'd take her if she would come.
Take her in a second.
Yeah, in a nanosecond. But so I think we have to be careful about that because that has a lot of connotations at this point that I think wouldn't work well.
Oh, and you know how the czar ended.
Pardon?
You know
Yeah.
how the czar ended.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm thinking about. So
So it did
Yes.
seem like we had a request, an opportunity there to find examples. I thought it was a very good question of where other towns have made either a similar investment or have leveraged the work of someone and what have been the positive outcomes of that. So rather than the hypothetical of you can get this and this many grants,
right.
there was a request for some specific examples of where that's in fact work.
And Zell did give one that night, but we
He
should
did.
for some.
And you
other
did.
ones, so.
And yeah, and you did too, Jess, right?
So I think we should do that, absolutely, because there is some concern about that. It seems to me. I mean, I'm not sure I know best how to do that other than to go basically town by town in a search. Does anybody have any suggestions? Or maybe we talk to Rebecca French and see who
Yeah,
she.
exactly. I was going to recommend Rebecca, right?
You want to contact her, Frank, or should I?
Sure, I'll give Rebecca a call. That's fine.
Okay. And I mean, there are people like energy coordinators who are, I just saw one from Hamden, for example, just today, which I didn't know about. So there are a bunch of people who are trying to do this. I also note that, and I will try to keep track of this going forward, is that in the Yale rag that comes out every so often, about once a month, they advertise various positions. Are people looking for people? And I think that may be helpful just to have a list of who those types of people are and what kind of positions they're looking for. Do you think we need to go any more than just titles and
Well, I think a couple of examples and then, ideally, I mean, if you had a couple, 2, 3, whatever it is, where I think what the council's looking for is that they get a return on that investment. But if I do make the leap of faith and hire this person, that I'm going to return to the council sufficient funds and savings that, it's going to make it worth my while. And so I think that equation needs to be thought through. Maybe that is something, not as literal as person X did Y in town Z, but is, here, for example, it's some of the information you and Jesse had pulled together of, here are some of the things you could do and some of the opportunities, here's what's being left on the table. Maybe if we could monetize some of that, it would help drive the point. But that would be my perception of what we're being asked.
And I think if Frank talks to Rebecca, she will have a pretty good sense of what's going on in municipalities in Connecticut. Now, we could also go outside of Connecticut, but if Frank will talk with Rebecca, I will try to poke around a little more. I think there are such people in Rhode Island, but I don't really know of them at this point.
Well,
Yeah, I was wondering about Rhode Island as well, Jesse.
I know there are people, several people in Rhode Island. I know there are also people in Boston and New York for sure, who are they're full-time heavy duty folks who are doing this. But I don't think, I'm not sure that's useful to get too far beyond.
Yeah.
No, but it is in terms of a municipality making the decision to expend money to hire somebody to work on this. And so if
Right.
we have comparable type municipalities in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, probably not as much New York, but Long Island, we should cite them. So let's see what we can find out.
I think
And
there
I
are two
thought-
ways. I think there are two ways of making the business case, so to speak. One is what I think we're all talking about now, which is an investment that probably will have a medium or long-term return. We did this, we saved so much money on energy, we did this, we avoided, etc. But the other approach is to say, we're spending $100,000 to bring a competent manager and grant writer, and they brought $1 million worth of grants, because that hits the books immediately. And so 2 levels of ROI examples would be great.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, now don't have my notes sitting in front of me, but Jess, I thought fairly recently we saw a communication about something that was going on in the planning office a couple of years ago, and Deb Jones picked up on some of it. And it was for classification of the town. I think it was along the lines that the effort that would benefit the flood insurance rates.
Yes, no,
Sort of
John
thing.
Reiner did start that process.
And there,
I think in our meeting with them.
there was an exchange. I seem to remember in my notes that there's an exchange with the planning department, and it was evident that there are not enough people to pick up the ball and run with it. The ball was there.
Because
So
one
there are
of
some
the
examples, we have solid examples right now, Victor, that have gone on and would have benefit to the town financially.
Well,
one of the first requirements of the community rating system is what I want to say, defining, verifying the elevations of properties within those regions. So I think we're going to get to that later this evening in terms of what you're doing, but you're absolutely right. John Reiner at least started that. So when we can reference it again, we can applaud the town for taking the first steps and say, having a person like this will enable us to go forward with it.
well, I mean, in fact, John Reiner did talk to the regional, I think it was regional FEMA person last year, and asked to get started on that process. FEMA wrote back and said, we're so busy, we can't do anything until mid 2021. And so I got a bunch of correspondence around that issue because John Burt was like, so why aren't you doing something else already? And that was the response. So it
That's
goes
the
to the
site
issue we're
visit.
talking about.
That's the site visit, which Frank really needs to be a part of.
Yeah, and that's, it's coming back now. The fellow wanted to visit to see the floodplain,
Right, right. And we can
characteristics of the
actually
floodplain.
identify
And then they wanted to visit in the office to see some of the paperwork. I said, if we bring you back in from the floodplain, we'll let you see the paperwork. Okay. It was an interesting exchange. That's the one.
But that's exactly what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Exactly.
Okay. It seems to me that our next steps then are really to get ready for that, coming up with at least 2 areas where we want to have specific, or actually 3 areas we want to have specific actions to recommend to the town council. One of those is harping again on the manager, which we've just been talking about. And do that maybe in a more low-key way by simply saying, we've gone out and looked at what other communities are doing. Here's what they've done. Here's what the results are. And it simply verifies what we requested. Second thing is that, and I'll throw this out on the table. I think there are several things that we need to do. One, at this point, without having a manager on board, one is we need to do something, and I've got some ideas about this, how to reduce, that shows that the town is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And that could be done with several ways. One, it could be, we recommend the town only buy electric vehicles and light trucks going forward. Or it could be, we could work with the police department and get them set up to buy an electric police vehicle, which says police on it, and right below it says fully electric. And what that does is that has a couple things. One, it will save us money. From what I can see in the analysis that other communities have done, Hyattsville, Maryland, for example, has done a heads up or a head-to-head analysis with a Ford versus a Chevrolet Volt. And the Volt comes in basically equipped the same way. It comes in at like a third of the price, or the third of the operating costs that the Ford comes in as. So there's a possibility. Now, when I talked to Patrice, she said, well, you got to be careful at this point because apparently there's some level of tension between the police department and the town council because of what happened last summer with Black Lives Matter, and then the town council establishing a review operation of some sort. And so she was cautioning me, and she would take the ball on that, at least at the start, and see if that might be a possibility. She also said that she didn't think the town didn't buy any vehicles last year, and she thinks the budget is going to be so tight this year that they're not likely to buy vehicles. So that may or may not be a way of reducing greenhouse gases, and also providing an educational opportunity. Second thing is that we've already recommended the town put the solar panels on the middle school and the two new elementary schools. And we could sort of get on that again and really bury into that, because if kids see solar panels on schools, they'll take that information home and say, hey, you know what they got in the school? Solar panels. And then that just ends up being a way of saving energy or saving fossil fuels, reuse of fossil fuels, and also makes a very good educational pitch to this whole area. And then Jesse, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about your other
briefly, I went back on the Green Bank website after we talked this morning. And the Solarize town, Solarize Groton, Solarize, whatever town it is.
Jesse, you need to lean into the microphone.
Sorry. The Solarize effort of the Green Bank is not as Green Bank directed as it was a couple of years ago when I was most familiar with it. But if we can, and I sent an email to Matt Masunas there, but I doubt he was in the office today. But I will continue to explore that, because what that involves is getting a number of households, usually not businesses, usually homeowners, to sign up to get an assessment for getting PV panels installed. And because they're all in the same neighborhood, it becomes cheaper. So it's not as Green Bank directed as it was a while ago, but I think that there still is an opportunity there.
I mean, all one has to do is drive up by the Navy base and all that Navy housing. They've all got solar panels on them now.
Absolutely.
All of them.
That was Navy directed,
Yeah.
but there are towns around us that signed up for the Solarize, whatever it was, and where I used to live, Canton, did a major Solarize Canton campaign. And I think the result is about 15% of the towns in Canton have solar panels. It's pretty high. That's cool.
So there are
How about
three.
the old land,
Yeah,
Pardon?
exactly.
how about the landfill option? Has that been explored with anybody,
Yes.
either in the town or with Green Bank or anybody?
The
I mean,
town
recently,
is
again, is the-
exploring it. Rick Norris has been in communication with the solar map program of the Green Bank, and he and the former commissioner of DEEP actually have walked the site. And what they're trying to look at now is the options. And so from my perspective, I would love that to be part of a net metering project for the town, but it may have gone far enough forward that it won't be, but it is being pursued. It may not be something.
And
we
I
can
just
claim
another
credit.
question in terms of what's been explored is that seems like wind might be also an option in some places in the town, especially up on the top of Fort Hill. It would seem like a good option, and maybe also at the landfill. And maybe it's beyond what we're going to try to accomplish immediately, but to explore the pros and cons of wind versus solar.
The small scale wind like that, Mickey, is way more expensive than solar if you have good exposure. I was interested today, there was an article somewhere, one of those papers, about the Hamptons initiating the first offshore wind in New York. Offshore wind becomes way more productive because we have the barrier of Long Island. I mean, it would be in the 10 to 15 kilowatt range if we put it up on top of Fort Hill. It's not out of the question. If we wanted to develop a microgrid there, some kind of small wind turbine might be an appropriate part of it. I don't think the landfill is going to be high enough to make that worthwhile, but I'm not an engineer. I don't know.
Yep, a part of the problem you're going to have immediately is anything of any size is going to have problems with the airport.
Right, but the
because
top
that
of
is-
Fort Hill might not. It might be out of that flight path already because
It
they
could
have
be.
significant towers there already.
Yeah. I myself think that wind power, even a small scale wind power, is a step that we would take much later, because I think someone really needs to really dig into that whole subject. And it's not, my memory is that we don't have enough wind velocity here to make that really practical. Frank, you may have some thoughts about that. I don't
No,
know.
I agree with you. I think the average wind speeds are too low. Long
Quite what
term.
it was doing at midnight last night.
Yeah, this morning, no, it was this morning that was really going
Yeah.
40, 50 miles an hour, but you don't get that very often. Thank you.
thank God.
Yeah.
Okay, now, are there other greenhouse gas reduction things that the town, and particularly the town, can do with existing staff that would make sense at this point as options to bring before them?
What about the facilitation of bicycle? Increase the number of bicycle routes. I think of what they did on Thomas Road and the repaving of Thomas Road, for example. They put in some very nice shoulders on that. The education program that may go along with it. The bike stands. There are no bike stands in front of a lot of post offices, sort of thing. Just speaking to alternative means of transport, facilitation of.
Yeah.
I like that idea, except I think we haven't got anybody on staff who has got the time to really dig into that, and that's going to take some real effort.
Well, I might take a look. I was just, if I sat here and I thought about it for 32 seconds, no longer than that.
Is there a biking organization that's been
Exactly.
coming
That's
to-
exactly, I was going to say that. That's exactly right. That we might be able to, with the moral support of the town council and some of the departments, planning in particular, we might be able to roust up some physical help and maybe even some few dollars for the buying. If Public Works could help with the painting of lanes, and then we have the educational program. In Cambridge, our old stomping ground, long time ago, Mick, all folks have equal rights, whether driving cars or riding bikes. There's an educational program that's needed in this state as to the role of the bicycle in the, that goes now both ways, not only the guy in the car, but the guy on the bike. You're a vehicle. You don't belong on the sidewalk, and you don't belong running lights and stop signs and the like. But you got it with your car. You got to give me room when you try to go by me, ... And that's education that goes to the police as well. So I think an effort in that, a team effort, is very possible.
I don't know, Frank. It sounds wimpy to me because back in the good old days, after commuting to Avery Point for 30 years on my bicycle, and particularly the excitement of going up Fort Hill with the EB guys throwing beer cans at me. I mean, that was motivation to get my ass up that hill, I'll tell you that. Now
Me,
it's
it was,
all,
it was mango and prune pits.
One of the slight things I think we should be aware of in that, because I was struck with, it wasn't Greg Howard, it was his predecessor, said that when they were repaving roads, they were narrowing them to have more permeable surface, which is a great thing, but is absolutely in opposition to the idea of making a bike lane. So I think we need to look at the routes that we think that would be important on. Certainly Route 1 would be a fabulous place to have a dedicated bike line, and they're not going to narrow Route 1 anytime soon. But Thomas Road, unfortunately, might be in a different category.
Well, it's a thought. You were asking
No,
for
I think
other
it's
ways to
an important thought, absolutely.
to affect the greenhouse
Yeah.
carbon footprint.
Do you recommend at some point that, what are we recommending for heating and cooling methods in buildings? If you move to solar panel, then do you also install, an electric heat pump and try to move away from, fossil fuels?
That's why I had proposed the townwide energy efficient audit program that includes
Right.
generous rebates for heat pumps. I think Zell and I talked earlier today.
Hard to
and-
hear you, Jesse. You have to get
Yeah,
closer.
that was
I
why
think we all need to buy Jesse a microphone for Christmas.
Right.
I don't know why. I mean, it's an Apple
No, it
computer.
just doesn't work very well.
That's why I had recommended the townwide energy audit challenge, because
Right.
that challenge would identify those opportunities and provide, I think it's a $7,500, no, it's $2,500, sorry,
Right.
$2,500 rebate for the mini splits. I think Zell was appropriately concerned that there is no one on staff today to spearhead that effort. I do think it's an effort that the town should
Yeah,
undertake.
because in going along with that, you'd look into weather stripping and
That all
a whole
happens.
lot of other things that go along with an entire audit of how much energy you're losing from the buildings.
Yeah.
So we talked about replacing the light bulbs with,
And the
and-
utilities do that.
LEDs.
Well,
They
we
do
have
that.
already in the town, many of the schools have got high efficiency bulbs in them already,
right,
but we've got LEDs and a lot of street lights. So there's been a fair amount of work on this,
I'm
but
talking about residences.
no, I know. Okay, well, here's the point. I think we got to be careful about pushing the public at this point until we have an ability. Well, one to demonstrate that this thing works by the town itself doing a lot of this stuff, and then if we're going to ask the public to do it, there's got to be public meetings and a good give and take. Now, I'm all for this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are towns in California, for example, that they want all the residents to go electric. They don't want to see any more gas, and they don't want to see any more oil.
And are they encouraging them?
Yeah, well, actually, in
Forbidden to put a gas stove in a new house in California.
What's that?
It's prohibited to put a gas stove in a newly constructed house. in
and the building code, both for retrofits and for new construction, required to be all electric, and you have to have plugs in your outside your house for plugging in your electric vehicle. But that's before we get ready to do that, we're gonna have to have a lot of public participation.
Around here, you won't do that. I can tell you, when I first came down here, I went into an all-electric house. It was a new house. It was a disaster in terms of cost.
Absolutely.
You got to heat the house.
Right.
You got to
And
keep the
electric
water
heat-
pipes from freezing and the rest of it. And the costs were just sky high against what it costs to heat with oil and the rest.
But that was
Mm.
electric resistance heating as
Right.
opposed to
Yeah,
mini.
I think it was electric resistance. That's quite right. I square
Well,
R,
I live in one of those houses.
right?
It's been all electric and it's resistant heating, and I'm still here. But it does cost me. And if I switch over to these mini splits, I can make a big difference. And if I put solar panels on the roof, then I really can make a big difference. I think actually Jessie has one of these houses where she's got it set up with the mini splits and the
My
solar panels.
electric bill last month was $7.52.
So that's
Order of
hard to make.
magnitude difference. Yeah.
But in order to do that, because of your experience, Frank, and my early experience, it was so expensive. People are going to balk, and until we educate the public.
Right.
It won't happen.
It's everything. The whole house would be designed for better insulation and the
Right.
like. That's
Oh,
where the
yeah.
energy audit comes in.
so when
Yeah,
we're
the
talking about these alternatives to fossil fuels and we focus in on cars and solar panels, I guess the question I'm asking is, are we also focusing on how the town of Groton heats and cools its buildings, which is an enormous, part of the equation? Then I agree with Jessie. I think that getting the public engaged in the audit of their house, and you get the promise of what it costs you get back in weather stripping and light bulbs and all that. I mean, and you're even talking about a better monetary deal, but I'm asking the question, have we even done all that with the town of Groton buildings?
No.
Yeah.
So
They-
So didn't we ask them to kind of take the lead by example? Shouldn't
they
they
have
not
started-
only do the part of the electric, light bulbs and whatnot, but what are you doing to make your buildings more energy efficient?
So the Peregrine Energy report that was done in 2013,
Yep, we have
the
it.
town did follow up on,
Mhm.
and like most other people, it cherry picked. It took the most cost effective or cost beneficial items like lighting. Lighting is a small investment with a huge return. It left the other more expensive things. So when we were at Deep, we really encouraged people to do the entire envelope in a building, because then you take the most expensive retrofits and you balance out their costs with the cheapest ones. We didn't do that.
Right.
We cherry picked. And so what has been left by and large, there are some exceptions to that, are items that were identified in that and updated in 2018 as to what the town has done. And in my report to the town council, I recommended that they continue that process. The town has been trying to work on those and move forward, but without energy performance contracting or something else. And one of the problems for the town is they picked off the prime projects and they gave them to energy performance contractors who knew they could meet the goal and get the savings. They are less clear now, but the town does need to continue on them. And in the 2018 update, I was kind of disturbed. There are probably 10 to 15 town meters that energy use has dramatically increased since that report was done rather than decreased. They tend to be ball fields, sewage treatment plant, other such things. But I at least recognized in what I presented that that should be a top priority, revisiting those recommendations that were made on a lot of good data.
Okay, so I think that's important, but let me say, that's going to require a manager to do that, because if you
Okay.
don't measure what your use is and follow it on a monthly and yearly basis, it becomes impossible to do it. Now, there has been some efforts that have been done in the past. This guy, Greenleaf, who was the facilities manager for all the schools, had worked on making the schools much more energy efficient. And he did it by swapping out the old boilers and putting in these Baderas, which are these high efficiency boilers in the schools. And that made a huge difference, but that still is not enough. They've got the whole envelope insulation issue. They've got the roof insulation. They've got air leakage. All those problems all need to be dealt with. And this is why, go ahead, Frank, Victor.
Finish your thought. No, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just finish your thought.
I'm sorry?
Finish your thought.
Oh, and so I think we're going to need to have the manager on board before we actually do that at the town level as well as at the individual level in the community. That, I mean, unless you all disagree.
No, it certainly wouldn't hurt, but Victor, you're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to put a couple of additional ideas on the table for you think it's. I just got my my tax bills for my 2 electric cars. We have 2 electric cars. We have electric bikes. We have solar, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to get rid of our oil furnace, but we're doing the best we can. The tax bills for my 2 electric cars are pretty high. And I don't know if they are based on the sale price of the car or if there is a differential rate for taxing my electric cars, or why not give electric car owners a small discount over fossil fuel, that would be a nice gesture, if not a nice break, and encourage people to buy electric vehicles. I know there have been rebates by the state and by the federal government and so forth, but that would go a long ways. I was pretty shocked.
So they
That-
valued the full value of the car because the vehicle
It-
tax for a town is based on the value of the car.
If it's based on the value of the car, then it's fine, but
That's what it's based
Yeah.
on.
and
No,
and,
it's
and I
exactly-
knew any idea that decreases revenue to the town would probably be unpopular, but just a thought.
I don't,
The second,
I think the problem is that, I think that's controlled by state law.
No, it's
Uh,
not. The town, well, the
Town
town
says.
uses whatever valuation it wants to. It could say that we are not going to increase, or we're going to discount the value of an electric vehicle by 50% or something. I don't think there would be anything in state law that would
Really?
change that as a policy thing.
yeah, and I would say just because electric vehicles are considerably more expensive at the front end. I wouldn't say a 50% tax break or anything like that, but something, 10-15%, I mean, would be directionally great. The second point that is a little bit different from what we've been talking is that we're talking about things that the town can do, which I think is great. But all the arguments about the cost effectiveness of energy conservation, the companies that sell this stuff have the data. And when we install solar in our house, they predicted what our electric bill savings would be. I have to say they're pretty darn accurate so far, with one exception, is they didn't anticipate that Eversource rates would go up so astronomically so as to accelerate my return on investment from 9 years to 7.5 years.
Right.
And we ought to leverage the knowledge that exists in the. I mean, Sarah, you and I have exchanged a list of the companies installers who have all the information about the ROI on energy, and we could put that information in front of the town and say, here are the facts, and this is backed up by experience, as we're not making it up. So that's the second point. The third point is that we're talking a lot again about what the town can do, and but I really like the idea of engaging the population. And as Frank, your suggestion with some of the ideas about bicycle lanes and other, and Jesse, with the energy surveys and so forth, that I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive about engaging the population, particularly with conservation measures. Somebody who moved from Greenwich to our area and became very involved in the Groton Conservation Advocates Organization spearheaded a mega effort in Greenwich when they hit a very severe drought some years back. The response of the population for water conservation that was 80-90% voluntary, I think. They may have forbidden watering lawns and things like that for part of it, but a lot of it was education and conservation, was dramatic. And he has concrete examples of the ton of water, the gallons of water per day consumption that was able to be saved and decreased by engaging the population in conservation. And to the point where they reverse the warnings and their rationing and so things like that ahead of projections. So I can talk to, my wife, to Eugenia, that she knows this person. So, but the example that I'm thinking about are drills that, as far as I'm concerned, could be organized by Eversource or could be organized by Groton Utilities. 2-day population drill on water conservation, planning, dissemination, public education, and they say for 2 days in August, and when we are probably hitting low levels of in our reservoirs, we are going to engage in a simulation or drill. And the idea here is that I don't think with climate emergencies, we can expect the public to improvise a response without some degree of involvement in the solution, in the training. And a 2-day drill is not going to kill anybody. The same thing with energy conservation. An energy consumption drill for 2 weeks, for a week, whatever, the right, and so as not to tax the public or Groton too much. But I think we need to practice these things, and I think we need to go beyond just the town. The town is very limited. The public sector and the Groton utilities and sort of this hybrid entities have too much influence and too much power, and frankly have the resources. Let's engage them.
I couldn't agree with you more, Victor. And it's exactly what I talked about way back when, that these efforts have to come from the grassroots up, not from the government down.
Right.
It's a Yankee trait, I think, to distrust some of the things that are laid on us. If you tell me I have to do it, I'm going to wonder about it. Number one. Number two, I have for quite a while, in dealing with matters water, which we work on fairly regularly, recognize the fact that the word conservation has been lost right across the board. And you can talk to me about energy, come out to Fisher's Island. I think I told you this. All the houses are now 200 amp houses. When we bought a house around this neck of the woods, if it was 100 amp service, they bragged about it. Conservation and the combination of conservation in terms of electricity and in terms of water would be a great theme for education. Again, a bit of the forgotten word, but it's something that keeps popping up today. I got education notes all along the side here.
So I have my own personal gripe on that, Frank. I live in a house that happens to have 4 bathrooms. I live here alone. I do not take 4 showers at the same time, but I have the highest water bill in Noang because we don't meter water. So I could leave my sprinkler running forever. I can do whatever I want. I have written to them, I don't know how many times, every year when I pay the $400 bill, which is still a bargain. It's totally a bargain.
You
But
bet.
to say, why in heaven's name don't you meter water? And they don't.
Well,
It's
I can tell you why
have
they
one
don't.
bathroom, your bill is this, 2, it's that.
Well, we do on Fisher's Island. I can tell you, it really gets people's
It
attention.
gets, and on the Mystic side, my friends on Fisher's Island, as my father used to call Barrington, Rhode Island water, it's liquid gold. Right here, it's not.
Right.
It's totally on the basis of
Okay.
how many bathrooms you have in your house.
Okay, I mean, I completely agree with you. Now, the reality is, this is going to be a big, heavy lift. And I don't think any of the 5, 6 of you that I'm looking at, including myself, are going to be able to do this without having some serious help. I have sat through these meetings in the village here, listening to the water company, and they've talked about metering. It's expensive, and they don't feel they can afford to do it. And their perception is, the water company's perception is that the public couldn't afford it, which is just wrong, but that's the way it is. So it's a huge effort to try to get, and it's complicated. The water in at least a good part of Groton comes from the big reservoir over there, but it comes out through these local water companies, NOAC having its own water company. And so you gotta work with them, and that's not easy to do.
No, it would
I
not. be the first-
I think it's a great idea. I think we need to do it. I'm not sure we should try to do it without having someone on board.
No, it's not my first order of attack.
No,
but
I
it is
agree.
So.
I was not going there, by the way. I didn't mean to go there. I'm talking about, do they drill on water conservation? Get the public engaged in educating in some level of participation in this effort.
Absolutely.
So I'm with Frank 100% on this. The town cannot do it alone.
And we can do it.
Well, we have to, it has to, there, I mean, this happens on all other forms of public participation with some organization. And I agree with you, Zell. It has to be somebody organizing it. But I don't think we ought to always default on somebody that the town will hire. I mean, the companies that Sarah, you and I looked at to put solars on our roof are dying to sell us solar. Okay, they said, you want to sell solar? Okay, give us a bang up presentation and a bang up data set that will say, this is the kind of money that you, town of Groton, are leaving on the table.
Mhm.
And we have the data to prove it. And now say, what kind of decisions are you going to make when you have this information in front of you? You've seen the fork, never go back to the chopsticks. Forget it. It's not.
We had a presentation like that over at Avery Point a couple of years ago, Zell. Remember? Fellows came down from the current solar group up in Middletown and made a very nice presentation. One of several pieces.
I guess I'm wondering, like, is our view that, and maybe the answer is yes, both, but is our view that, we want to make recommendations where the town can lead by example and to ensure that they have done, what they can do to reduce their carbon footprint in the buildings, the vehicles, the way they operate, and or is our goal to really kind of go after big heavy end users within the town footprint and to provide them with the information of what alternatives may exist.
Mhm.
Because realistically, installing solar is a great thing to do. It is something a very privileged person gets to do. It's very, very expensive. And the
Actually
payback
not.
is,
If you want to buy it, but if you want to, the
you don't want to
interest
buy it,
rates,
you want to lease it, yes, it's possible, but you still have to put out a lot of money.
No, you come up with a utility bill that is less than your current utility bill. You
I
don't get
agree that is where you end up. I have it. But you still have to be able to afford the upfront cost.
Bill,
Isn't it
to interrupt, just looking at the clock, I look at this conversation we've had now, we've skidded across several subjects, as sort of a think fest in anticipation of coming up with a number of priority items for the town council presentation in February, which we will
Correct.
put a point on in January. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, if the people who raised some of these issues would like to work on them, that's fine, because we don't have to make a decision tonight about this thing. I think we need to have something that deals with reduction of greenhouse gases.
In the overall town of not only the town municipality, but
The whole thing.
residents.
Now,
So
I think there are a series of steps you go and you do the low hanging fruit first, the easy things, which I think is the town itself. And then you go from there to the public. unless you've got something that's already got such great incentives in it that people are gonna buy into it because they didn't know about it. But I mean, I don't see how we're gonna do it any other way, particularly given that we can't have public meetings at this point. We really have to do those things that we can do at this point. Now, I think what you guys have said makes sense down the line, but pick those things that we can actually do. And mindful that how difficult it is for us to simply get our documents written and out to each other. Never mind all the research that goes into getting there. Well, okay, so I'd like to change the subject to the other item that I think is really important and that Frank brought up, which has brought up with the coastal flooding and the resiliency side. I think there is a good case, and I think one that's doable, or at least we can start with. It may not be able to finalize it, but we can start with it, with this whole notion of the evacuation staffs and signs throughout the community saying why those staffs are there, what it means. It's pure education. It would engage us with the public works people who are going to have very important role there. It will engage us with the planning staff, which is going to have a very important role there. And it's going to be for us to figure out, do we have staffs as you enter the floodplain or just exiting the floodplain? I mean, it goes both ways. You know, you have a sign, you've seen them on the highway. You're entering the watershed of such and such. In our case, you're entering the floodplain of Groton Long Point. Simple little thing. Now, I think that has a long-term impact upon people if they see that enough. And I think the sign that goes along with it ends up being, you know, really, really important. And that then leads to our figuring out how to facilitate the mapping program, which is going to require the coordination of John Reiner's planning group, the FEMA side of it, with the public works people, with the assessor, with the GIS people, and with CERCA. And that can start putting lines on maps, which we can hand to individual property owners, but we also can collectively put that together and come before the council and say, this stretch of road is below or is in the floodplain. It has this value, and there's only one way to get out, or there's maybe two ways to get out, or that we've got this kind of problem with the road because it's so low, whatever it may be. But that's something that's doable. Frank?
No, that all sounds fine. But let's just take the, whatever we're calling them, the staff and sign issue.
Yep.
Because you know that another thing that I believe in is that before we bring something like that in any substance to the town council, that we have conversation with Public Works and planning. And,
Yep.
and hearing no objection, I could do that. You know, I'm in contact with Greg Hanover on a regular basis. And we talked on occasion to John Reiner, so we could get that done. I think we want to, I'm saying now in a more general statement, we want to be careful with how we present material to the council without having it already to some extent vetted with the relevant departments. As in, pick a name, the police department. You're talking about the cars and the rest.
No, I agree with you. And I spent a fair amount of time trying to do that myself with the manager and with the town, the mayor.
Sure.
Just be mindful that we were told that we could not spend a lot of departments' time. So
we're not asking.
As long as you can do it in a way that
Right.
keeps it under the radar,
Right.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, we're not asking them to do anything,
No, I know.
particularly our job. We're
I know.
saying, I want to hear, and there may be I've already spoken with Hanover months ago, as I think I told you guys, about the staffs. There was a question who owned the staffs,
Yep.
whether the town could move them around. The rest of it, the long and short of it is, the staffs are ours to play with.
Well, what I would
Most
suggest we do, go ahead, Jesse.
The most fundamental part of that is getting the elevations right. And I think when we earlier talked about this, it was, okay, this is the special, I would say, not the flood zone, the special hazard flood area, that zone. And this is where it will be with 20 inches of sea level rise. This
Right.
is where it is today. This is where we anticipate it will be. And so if John Reiner has been really serious about trying to engage with the community rating system at FEMA, that is a first requirement of FEMA, that you do that you actually map those areas and you know the properties that are in that special flood hazard area. And that would form a basis for this. So I think if you have more conversations with John or Public Works, it should be, are you on board? Is this something you're already working on to map these elevations in an accurate way? Because as we said, when we first started this, staff sign thing, we don't even know whether those are accurate. They were done years and years ago.
Yeah, I'd make the point that there's a difference between mapping property, I know it's an acre, as opposed to mapping a particular point. A particular point
Absolutely.
can be done differently or can be done quickly. Whole properties end up requiring a lot more work.
No
It's
question.
the beginning. It's the starting point.
It's a beginning. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what we can do is we can start that conversation informally with the departments, and then I can try to see if we can set up a meeting with them early in January, and we can have a go with it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
It would be great.
Okay, let's do that. And we'll start with the staffs and see how that flows into the FEMA and how we cooperate with CERCA.
But as I understand it, by the way, the informal meeting is me with John Reiner, maybe me and you with John Reiner, but no more. Otherwise, we get into it. We have to hold
Right.
a
Okay.
task
Yeah,
force.
I mean, the way we could do it, I mean, legally, if two of us do it, it's no problem. If three of us does it, it's a problem.
Tilt,
We
right.
can do, two of us can go do that. I'm happy to go with you, Frank, or Jesse. When you want to talk about
I'm
FEMA,
happy
you
to
go with Frank.
defer.
So I think we can do that, okay?
Right.
Okay,
I
can
believe in it.
I have one other thing that is absolutely necessary for me to do with you guys, and that is we have to establish when we're going to meet next year. I have to turn in a list of dates to the town clerk. And it looks like I didn't hear from anybody except Sarah. And Sarah says, no Wednesdays. And so I would like to suggest that we meet on the third Thursday at 5 o'clock each. What? No?
I heard yesterday, because I had, by the way, folks, one of the reasons I'm dialing off at something like 2025 after is at 6:30, there is a Groton Long Point Task Force meeting, which we found out about yesterday. But the only reason I found out about yesterday is I was supposed to remember that way back when, that day, Thursday at 6:30, had been picked by the task force as their annual or their monthly meeting day to avoid the conflict with us on Wednesday. So Thursday, 6:30 is booked. Third Thursday.
Oh, okay. How about Thursday at 5 o'clock
Well,
or 4:30? This is totally our decision. I just need to have you guys all agree about when we're going to do it, so I mean, we can make exceptions when someone's got to be away or whatever we got to do. We have to hold a special meeting, which is a different procedure. But I
Right.
just need to be able to tell them when it is we want to meet regularly.
Well, Thursdays are best for me, but why does it have to be the third Thursday? What about the second Thursday?
Or the
Tell me
fourth.
what you want to do.
What about
Second's
the
fine
fourth
here.
Thursday?
The second,
Sarah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Victor? Victor, that works for you? And that works for you, Jesse?
Yeah,
Second
Okay, so
Thursday?
it's the second Thursday
Okay.
of each month at 5 o'clock.
That's fine.
Okay.
Five is
Does
good.
that work for everybody?
Hazel,
Yeah.
are we gonna try to keep these to an hour and a half or?
Well,
yeah, I second that strongly.
That's right.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, pumpkins and Ferraris. Come on now.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to do it, an hour and a half. And if we need to meet more often, we can do that too on special meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other old business that you want to talk about?
No, not old business. With regard to our town council meeting,
Yes.
I think that the meeting would benefit from a written read ahead for the subjects to be discussed, so that they don't come in and be surprised by what we're talking about. And I thought we had agreed to do that the last time around. That's why I put that piece in. But I think some of the comments that came back that night, how much material was presented and this, that, and the other thing, we could really avoid that by having a bit of a read ahead available.
And we wanted to do that. We just didn't get our act together.
I'm happy. I mean, that was out there and it didn't happen. So I'm happy to have that happen. My concern is it has to be a read ahead that can be no more than a page. These guys do not read ahead. I can tell you that right now.
Well, then they have no excuse. That's a, but a page is easy, no, a page is easy, and it, I think, should be submitted to them, say Friday night for the Tuesday meeting, something like that.
That's what they would like to have.
Okay.
Okay,
Not Monday night for the Tuesday meeting.
No, I agree.
Okay.
So Zell, at the
Yes.
next meeting,
Yes.
you've had sort of a brainstorm of all kinds of different things that are suggestions of what could be done, right? Are we gonna kind of then narrow the focus down to a couple things that we're gonna detail?
My preference is to narrow it down to probably 2 or 3 things. One of those things has to be the manager's job. And then my preference is to have one on greenhouse gas reduction and one on sort of the acute catastrophic issue
Of flooding,
of floods.
okay.
And we can
So-
work it in.
So
Or-
one
or
way
it-
you're gonna go at the sort of the energy audit, solar, electric vehicle. that-
Whatever we decide to do in there, that's fine.
Well, I guess I'm asking who's deciding what, so that when we meet next in January,
Okay,
are we kind of looking at, well, we should be massaging the presentation for February.
yes. Okay, I mean, Frank you're gonna take the coastal issue, right?
Yes.
Okay, who would like to, Jesse, do you want to do that with
Yeah,
one of our other partners here?
happy to.
Okay.
If you have, or if Victor.
You need to
has-
speak up.
If you have or Victor has information on the life cost analysis of electric vehicles, I don't have that.
I sent Zell, I sent you an information about a whole company devoted to nothing but a cost benefit analysis of a fleet of no less than 100 vehicles. And so let me see what I can get from them.
Okay,
I
Sounds
can
good.
tell you, we're not gonna get 100 vehicles, but that's all right. I mean,
But you cannot, you cannot make a credible estimate with 5 cars, you
No.
know? It
No, I
has to, you have to have critical mass. It's like a clinical trial. Conclusion not valid.
okay, do we all understand what we need to do here?
Zell, what day was that Groton meeting, the town council meeting?
Town council will be the 23rd of February.
Okay.
Now, I would make the pitch to Victor and Sarah that if you got a specific thing as it relates to health, I'd like it.
Well, would there be value in recommending that they first take a look at that social vulnerability index? You know, and really try to start figuring out, you know, where does the town lie with that? I don't know who would actually do the work of that, Victor.
I don't know either. I was in the middle of looking into that, and I got some information that I haven't had a chance to read.
If you've got something around that issue and that falls in with a catastrophic flood event or some other event that relates to climate change, bring it up. The problem is, I think that to me feels like it's a more long-term analysis that's going to require someone to do a lot of work. Now, I may be wrong.
It also
We'll see which one takes
It
longer.
also directly relates to the energy efficient thing. Those are the families in Groton that can save
That's exactly right.
$150 to $300 a year on their energy bills by doing this for absolutely no cost.
That would be a fine link. And if you can do that, that would be great.
And you're saying if they were to sign up to have the home audited?
It costs them nothing. The light bulbs, the weather sealing, etc., on an average saves a home at least $250 a year.
Jesse, you establish the median household income that qualifies for those free surveys. What else do we have to do? They already have that information.
It's family of 4, it's $70,000. That covers a lot of Groton.
That's
And
a hell of a lot of people.
Go up, it keeps going up.
I think that right there, that is already an actionable item, and how the town disseminates that information, how it promotes a campaign to do that. I don't know. It doesn't take an army to
tax bills,
promote that.
libraries, all sorts of things.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I don't think you need a full-time czar to do that.
Anybody who pays an energy bill, those who have landlords that pay it, it's more complicated, though there are programs for them.
Yeah.
But anybody who pays their own energy bill, it's very straightforward.
Okay, so I need to have someone look into it.
I have looked into it.
What
What else would you like?
What specifically do we have to look into?
Where are those vulnerable areas? And I mean, are
Well,
they
but
direct-
this is income based.
Okay,
And that is a major component. I mean, if I'm going to look into
how do
the
we-
vulnerability, but I think that is a good enough criterion to go with it.
Anybody who
There's no
receives-
downside to it.
Right, anybody who receives
Yeah.
any public assistance in Groton should be told about this, number one. That's really, really simple. I think tax bills, an insert in a tax bill is a
Right.
very, very cheap sort of publicity kind of thing. Information on a counter in a library, at the senior center, whatever. I mean, it's not rocket science.
Right. Exactly.
okay. So next time we meet in January, we'll have something written up about that.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
have a
So
snow
it sounds
blower
like
at
the
my door.
three things you're going at are going to be the town manager, the details around there, the floodplain, and the suggestion on the risk of coastal flooding, and then the energy audits.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
And we're gonna overwhelm the town council. And they may say, we'll do 1, 2, and 3. Well, you're shaking your head, Victor, but you watch.
Okay, folks. I'm
All
gonna
right. I
let somebody
need to
else
sign off. I
adjourn.
need to sign off.
Okay. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Indeed. Stay well,
And,
folks.
Same to you all.
And we're gonna meet on the second Thursday of January
At
Good.
5 PM for an hour and a half.
for an hour and a half.
So I can eat dinner at 7.
Okay?
And
7:30 at the latest.
and Jesse, I was showing you the headset with the microphone. It really works well.
Oh, well, I should do that. I had my snow blower at the door. I had to go do that. I'm shoveled out.
All right.
Woo-hoo.
Good night, folks. Thank
Good
you.
night, folks.
Night,
Take care.
I made the
everybody.
motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, I wasn't here.
Yeah, motion adjourned.
Second.
Who
Who
made
made
it?
the motion? Frank?
I'll make the motion. Okay, well, I'm just,
Frank and Sarah.
Okay.
I was gonna let somebody else do it tonight.
No, I always do it.
Yeah.
It makes
Good
my
night.
life simpler. Thank you,
There
guys.
you go.
Good
Thank
night,
you
folks.
all.
Buddy,
Have a good holiday.
you too.
Okay, take care. Stay healthy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.